Hi guys and welcome back to SwitchUp. I'm Mark Walker and today Glen and I are going to be looking at our long promised list of our 10 worst games on Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, so if you remember, when we hit 20,000 subscribers, we did a list of the 10 best games as per our review scores. Well, as we're just about closing in on 25,000 now, we thought it was time to look at the 10 worst. So these are not necessarily the 10 worst games on the Switch, these are the 10 worst games that we have reviewed according to our scores.
We just want to say a massive thank you to all of you who've been following us since the beginning, and even those who have joined recently. It really does mean a lot when we have these huge conversations between subscribers and just fans of computer games in general. Okay, so to kick off my list, we have Blood Waves, which scored 58%. Interestingly, exactly like Glen just said, it really isn't that bad a game. It has a lot of redeeming things. I enjoyed the actual core experience, and the shooting mechanics with a Pro controller weren't bad. They just really missed the mark by not including things like multiplayer, split screen, and how about more than one level? That definitely would have helped. Obviously it's got Lara Croft in it, there she is in all her glory.
Yeah, I've not played this one. It looks like a game from a small development team who had an interesting concept in their heads but couldn't quite execute it properly. Right, my first one then is one with a slightly higher budget than that, to be fair, and it's Nickelodeon Kart Racers. Now I gave this 53%. My biggest issue with this was just the lack of soul, really. In terms of the controls and the general gameplay, it handled fairly well, but there was just no charm about it. We're talking about classic characters, and it just looked lifeless. There were no catchphrases from any of the characters. Their eyes had that soulless, blank expression about them. For a game about Nickelodeon characters, which was meant to be celebrating the history of the channel, this one seriously missed the mark. If you are a fan of Nickelodeon and you find it for cheap enough, you'd probably get a bit of enjoyment out of it, but it's just a shame to see developers really not put the care and love into the games that the characters deserve.
I've got Suicide Guy as my next lowest rated score, and that got a score of 51%. Admittedly, I was a little bit triggered by the title in this game, but tried to review it as fairly as I could, and by that I mean I really didn't enjoy it. The puzzles were ridiculous, and the overall premise of taking well-known franchises and films and including it in a game about suicide just didn't really do it for me. It scored 51%.
Yeah, I don't think I played that one either, actually, to be fair. I must have watched your review, Mark. Yeah, I saw the premise. Wasn't it something about going to sleep and wanting to wake yourself up and you had to die in the dream or something weird? Yeah, I don't know. What did it get, 51? Yeah, sounds... yeah, it sounds about right. Okay, my next best worst then is a game called North. Now this was actually from the same developers as the one that Mark mentioned at the beginning. They're a developer called Sometimes You, and to be fair, I'll give them their due. They do try something new with pretty much every one of their games. This was one of the very first reviews that I did. I think the game cost something like £2.50, £2.30. It's not a shocking game. It's an allegory for refugees, and it's set in a dystopian future, kind of like 1984, that sort of thing. The story really grabbed me actually, but it just didn't work as a game at all. And I'll be honest, this review taught me quite a lot because I was a bit unfair in the way I treated the game. I made fun of it a bit more than I should have done, and I actually learnt from that review and learnt that you can criticise a game without being an idiot about it, to be fair. So 49%, this was quite an important review for me actually.
My next lowest score is Riot Civil Unrest, which is quite a recent one from Merge Games. Now, as soon as I saw this on the eShop, I was expecting very good things indeed. I love the style of it. That pixel art top-down view reminded me of the early Command & Conquer games, but when I got to the actual experience, it was far more hollow than I was hoping for. The overall premise of the game is quite an obvious one, and it's to stop a riot or start a riot, but it just amounted to shifting a group of troops and then getting them to stand there until the riot ends if you're the rioters, or on the converse of that, you were supposed to clear the rioters, but the controls were so bad and so unresponsive that it just left me very frustrated.
Okay, my next one then is another quite recent one, and this was one that I know a few people were waiting for, and it was My Girlfriend is a Mermaid, which scored 47%. Now, actually, this is quite interesting that this has come just after the North comment, because I could have absolutely caned this one and been a bit of a dick about it, but I decided not to. I was as professional as I could be, but at the end of the day, it's a story about a girl that's a mermaid, and it just wasn't very good. Mark's just informing me that she had some interesting features, which she did, but the storytelling was poor, and that's what really brought it down for me. It was very juvenile. I could have read it and appreciated it for what it was, even if it wasn't my cup of tea, but at the end of the day, a poor story is a poor story forever. Yeah.
Which we hate. Okay, so both I and the majority of the SwitchUp family know that Glen absolutely loved that one. There was no hiding it. It was a delight for him, and he'll have many more of a similar ilk going forward. My next worst reviewed game is Modern Combat 5, which was a game from 2014 that released on iOS. Now, I've got nothing against mobile ports. I know some people destroy them just because they were on mobile, but for me that's ridiculous. You get some absolutely brilliant games which didn't exactly begin their lives on mobile, but were fantastic on that platform, like Bastion and Transistor. But for me, Modern Combat, a port of a 5-year-old first-person shooter, didn't really cut the mustard. Now, understandably, they removed a lot of the free-to-play elements from the game, and some people quite enjoyed it, but I found the whole experience to be a much worse version of a Call of Duty game. I don't understand why we don't just get one of those on the Switch. My real issue wasn't the main campaign, it was the online mode. As soon as I went online, the frame rates dropped down, the visuals seemed to take a major hit, and the overall experience just didn't work. Admittedly, I was using the motion controls, and some people have said it's better with the Joy-Con, but I like motion controls in first-person shooters, and if they don't work, sorry, it's going to take a knock on the score. This scored 36%.
Okay then, my next one was the Goosebumps game that came out on the Switch. This was a point and click game using the R.L. Stine Goosebumps series as its inspiration. The major problems with this were, first of all, the story wasn't very good, and secondly, it was just very obtuse in terms of its item management and when you needed to use them. Now, I know this is a criticism that you could label a few point and click games over the years, but we're in 2019 now, and it's not something you should be seeing in this day and age. For what it was passable, but is that really what we're going for these days, games that are just passable? And I think it was quite expensive as well. It was disappointing because I think I mentioned in the review I was a bit of a reluctant reader as a kid, and Goosebumps was a series of books that got me reading, and I was quite looking forward to this game, but it was a big disappointment.
My worst reviewed game of all time on SwitchUp is one called Paranautic Activity. It had a Minecraft voxel style artwork which really didn't click with me, but the main issue were the controls. It handled appallingly on Switch. I was saying to Glen this evening actually, you look at a game like Turok, it's a 25-year-old Nintendo 64 game that has been improved drastically by the inclusion of motion controls. And if you're going to do a game like Paranautic Activity on the Switch, it really needs that. It just handled so poorly. Add to this, the music really didn't click with me, and that's not to say that it wasn't just my style. It was very loud, very invasive, and detracted from the overall experience rather than enhanced it. For me, that scored 30%.
Okay, my worst reviewed score on SwitchUp so far goes to a game called Legendary 11, which scored 46%. Now, this was a game that came out just before the World Cup 2018. Obviously a football game. I do love football, as I've mentioned a fair few times now, and I was really looking forward to this one. It had a retro style. I don't mean in terms of pixelated graphics, I mean the footballers looked like they'd walked out of the 1980s or the 70s. They had the perms and the short shorts. It looked a lot of fun. Unfortunately, it just didn't work. I remember I started playing it and the ball went out for a corner or a throw-in or something, and the ball just didn't come back. It stayed in the crowd and the game just kept ticking down. It was really bizarre. And then when it got to half time, the crowd gave me the ball back and I could continue. I think another time a penalty was awarded when the ball was in the centre circle. I took a shot and the ball went nowhere near the goal and it was awarded as a goal. I've got footage of this in the actual review. I was lucky enough to be capturing when this was happening. Someone said they should have used VAR for that goal, which is a good shout actually. It's a shame. I was really looking forward to this one and I was actually enjoying it. It was, it was decent. It reminded me of like an arcadey PS2 game. And that's not necessarily a criticism. It was quite a cheap game for what it was. That would have been fine, but it just didn't work. I think they have patched it since. I haven't tried it since, so it may be that it's okay now. But at the time, it was quite a bit of disappointment. And at 46%, it's my lowest scored game on SwitchUp.
Yeah, it's a really funny review, that one. Definitely worth catching. So that's it for our list. These are our 10 lowest rated games on SwitchUp that we've reviewed. Let us know down in the comments what are some games that maybe you've purchased on the Nintendo Switch that have not met your expectations. Now, we don't mean just to destroy them or be rude about them, but just let some people know maybe ones that they should avoid.
Also, if you've picked any of these 10 games up and enjoyed them, then please do let us know. What was it that we've missed that you liked? Or if you disliked them as much as we did, let's share some war stories in the comments, shall we? Anyway, thank you very much for watching this. Thank you, as always, to our Patreons for your support, and each and every one of you for watching our videos. Thank you for what hopefully by the time this comes out will be 25,000 subscribers. And until the next one, happy gaming.
See ya!